For more than a decade, my husband Gavin Newsom, the Lieutenant Governor of this incredible state, has been a central figure in advocating for marriage equality not only in California, but across the country. In 2004, shortly after being elected mayor of San Francisco, Gavin boldly directed the city-county clerk to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples in violation of a state law banning same-sex couples from marriage. He went on to grant marriage licenses to thousands of gay and lesbian couples, including longtime LGBT advocates Phyllis Lyon and the late Del Martin, who had been in a committed relationship for over 50 years. You don't see this kind of leadership very often from politicians, our public servants, nor do you see this kind of leadership very often when the issue doesn't directly impact the individual leading the way. As mayor and later as lieutenant governor, Gavin continued his support for the LGBT community and spoke out against Proposition 8 and the Defense of Marriage Act. Just recently attended the Supreme Court's oral arguments on the Proposition 8 case, where he continued to voice his support for the LGBT community. This hasn't been an easy road for Gavin. He's been criticized by his own party and presidential candidates who claimed it's too soon, too fast, or what are you doing? Civil unions are good enough. But would we really be where we are today if it weren't for Gavin's incredible courage and conviction? He's never shied away from using the platforms he's worked so hard to earn to speak out on behalf of the LGBT community and for policies that move equality forward for all. And at a time when more and more elected officials are starting to side with equality if they haven't already, he continues to be the trailblazer, championing equality for all. GLAAD's Golden Gate Award is presented to those who, through their work, have increased the visibility and understanding of the LGBT community. And I'm honored to present this award to a leader who always stands up for what he believes in, regardless of the political consequences. My incredible husband. Why am I crying? Father to Montana, Hunter, and as Montana's nicknamed her, Baby Blue Sky, Gavin Christopher Newsom.
Thank you all. Thank you to Baby Blue Sky's mother. That's not the name. Jen, thank you. Thank you all. Evening's late, and we're all here to see Adam. All right, I'll admit I'm here to see Adam. A few of us. Jen, thank you very much for the gracious introduction. I'm appreciative, and what can you say? To hear Chris, Sandy, and everyone up here, that was humbling and rather extraordinary, and I'm really grateful. It means a hell of a lot, trust me. So I'm thankful. Let me, this is either good for you or bad. I do not have prepared remarks. But I want to, I'm trying to connect the dots as I'm listening to everybody and all these extraordinary people that were rightfully recognized here tonight and have been recognized over the course of the year, for that matter, years, by GLAAD and the extraordinary work that GLAAD does. It just reminds me of something fundamental, particularly reflecting on all this Benghazi and what's happening around the world in Syria and drone issues, Yemen, all the like. And it's just a reminder, you think about this world where nations and people literally are being torn apart because of racial and religious and ethnic controversies that have fueled fanaticism and fueled terror. And you contrast that to an evening like this. Here we are in San Francisco, one of the most diverse cities in the most diverse state in the world's most diverse democracy. This is a city at its best. It's always been a city of dreamers, of doers, of entrepreneurs, of innovators, but most importantly, we've prided ourselves on being on the leading and cutting edge of new ideas. But there's one fundamental that defines the best of this city and the best of this organization, and that is we don't tolerate our diversity. We truly celebrate our diversity each and every day. And we highlight all those wonderful and interesting differences, but at the end of the day, we unite around our common humanity. As Dr. King so eloquently said, we're all bound together by a web of mutuality. We're all in this together. So I think of that in the context of what this night represents and really what we're celebrating and what has filled me with a sense of pride and spirit. It's that sense, that mission that the best is yet to come. That while we've made extraordinary progress, when you listen to folks like Eric and Karen, they're struggling to advance the rights with Jennifer and others of the LGBT community and the Scouts, we know we have work to do. The issues of End Up, we've got work to do. Trying to convince Virginia Thomas to convince her husband, Justice Thomas, to stand on principle. As Steve was arguing, think about this, by the way. I have a father who's a judge, so they all sound like this. God, sir, said the judge, when he sentenced Richard Loving to 1 year in prison because he had the audacity to say, I do, to Mildred Jeter, someone of his different race. They left the state of Virginia to go to D.C. to do it. They made a terrible mistake going back to Virginia, and as a consequence, broke the law of Virginia. And in a late night raid, they were arrested, the police hoping to catch them in the act. And the judge, the lower court, told Richard, in sentencing that 1 year in prison, he said, God, sir, God put different races on different continents for a reason. God never wanted the races to mix. By the way, that's almost verbatim. The argument then, as stale as the argument is today, the backdrop of that 9-0 decision, as Steve noted, the backdrop of that activist Supreme Court that overturned those laws in 16 states was 64, one poll, 70% of Americans that opposed interracial marriage at the time. Yet those judges stepped up and stepped in and righted that wrong. Contrast that to where we are today as it relates to marriage equality in this country. Contrast that to the majority now of Americans that stand tall in support of the LGBT community and support of marriage equality in this country. I'll close. I flew up from LA today, and don't ask me how the heck this happened, but we had a circuitous route over Death Valley. Now, this reminded me of something. 2004 was a special year in many respects, but interestingly, in 2004, the winter of 2004, something remarkable happened in Death Valley. 7 inches of rain. And in the spring of 2005, Tyre Valley was carpeted with flowers. No one had ever seen anything like it. And it was a reminder to all of us that the valley wasn't dead, it was dormant. It was waiting for the right conditions to come along. That the seeds of possibility were planted in that previous winter. And I say that to say this. You talk about seeds of possibility. You've sown them for a generation. You have fought the fight against every conceivable odds to give people like me the courage to stand tall and support your efforts. The extraordinary people that you have worked with and supported and elevated and fought for. What an extraordinary testament to their courage. Phyllis Lyon and Del Martin, to obviously credible legacy of Harvey Milk, to the extraordinary leadership in my own town of people like Tom Amiano and Leslie Katz, extraordinary contributions of Susan Leal and so many others that are here today, Supervisor Campos and former supervisor, my good friend Bevan Dufty, the extraordinary work of people like Willie Brown and so many others that have stood up, stood tall, and fought the good fight. And so let me just long-windedly thank them for their leadership, for their courage, and for their willingness to fight the good fight. This is the final point. I just hope in the contrast, Steve said something powerful about this notion of animus and carrying grudges. He didn't use those words, he was more eloquent. But it reminds me of a truism. This world is way too damn small. Our wisdom is absolutely too limited. And our lives are too short to enjoy fleeting victories at the expense of others. So if there's nothing else we celebrate tonight, let's celebrate triumphing together. Thank you all very, very much.